I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
We will be continuing our Genesis Revisited series. And Rob, are you there, brother?
Yes, I am. Zen, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. And how about yourself?
Oh, man, I'm completely wrecked right now.
Oh, no, why?
Man, I hired this 26-year-old kid to whip me back into shape, you know? And this kid torturing me, man. Like, he had me doing, this week we did 3 sets of 60. So it was like, go as high of weight as you can, do 20. Rest for 5 seconds, drop 20 pounds, do 20. Rest for 5 seconds, drop 20 pounds, and do another 20. And then rest for a couple minutes and do it all over again 3 times. Like,
Nice.
dude,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, it was chest and back on Tuesday and legs and shoulders today. And like, so like, oh, my whole body's just like, dude, what are you doing?
You're going to be beefy, man, when we see you in September.
Yeah, maybe so. Looking forward to that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, myself as well. And it seems most people are going to be coming. There are a couple that possibly might not be able to attend, but for the most part, most people will be there. And then we'll have a couple of other speakers that will fill in for those that do not show up. And so, yeah, looking forward to it. And a lot going on, a lot, has happened. It seems like every week when we come together, there's just more insanity.
Yeah, I saw that bombing that happened recently.
Right, in Lebanon.
Yeah, my friend Marty Martin sent me. It looks like, I don't know if it's infrared footage or something, but
Oh, wow, really?
shows somebody was shooting. I guess it was on fire first or something.
Yeah.
But it clearly shows a missile coming in right before that second explosion, that massive explosion.
My son had told me that as well.
Yeah, I just saw it like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm not following all of that so much, so I don't know a whole lot about what's happening. I've just seen a few things here and there on Facebook, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like every time we get together, there's something else crazy going on in the world.
I know. I mean, it's just nonstop. And I mean, not just, kind of regular uh, daily occurrence, but just really significance. I mean, this is like, 9/11 for the Lebanese people. And I haven't seen the footage that you're talking about, but we did a show last night about this whole thing, and my son had mentioned seeing something of that nature as well. And so, wow, that's kind of surprising because without a doubt, there are 2 explosions. Everybody was focused on what was happening with the regular fire, and if that was whatever the chemicals or, the warehouse, whatever. And then this happening, it certainly seems to have been a very high grade explosion with the mushroom cloud and then the repercussion blast that sent shockwaves out 20 kilometers and shattering all the windows in that area. It's unreal.
Crazy.
Yeah, very much so. And so, it just whoever was responsible certainly seemed like an attack to me. Trump did kind of say that in the press conference that he was having on the coronavirus, that he had somehow been briefed by his generals and that they also spoke of it as being an attack. And so, we don't know who's responsible or what the reasons are, but certainly it's not a good thing. They said that the economy of the people there in Lebanon, that the currency had lost 80% of its value in like a couple of months. They can't even get money out of the banks, and 85% of the economy was sustained as imports that came in through the port there, and that is all leveled and all destroyed. And so there's going to be a lot of suffering and a lot of just uncertainty with regard to the people there. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm trying to share it here for the viewers on YouTube right now. The video that was sent to me. Let me see if I can rewind it here. Shows the fire, and then a missile comes flying in from the top left, and then boom.
Wow.
Pretty crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying that, that as far as, because it looked to me like some of the tests that were done in like White Sands, the whatever atomic blasts or whatever, and a lot of people say that those kind of weapons don't exist, but certainly this looked like something in similarity. The event, the unfolding, and the aftermath. I don't know what it was, what kind of explosives, what kind of missile, but it caused massive devastation and destruction, and it's just and you got to feel for those people. And it said that also, and we'll move on from this in a short bit, but that this was a huge Christian population as far as the Lebanese people, that there's a big Christian minority or portion of the people there in Lebanon. They speak, some speak English, and they do, follow the faith as far as, being disciples and servants unto Christ and the Most High, and believing in the cross. And so that's another unfortunate aspect of all of this, but I hate to see anybody suffer. And
yeah, I hear you, man. We've talked about it for years. You, myself, many others, we study eschatology. We look at events that are prophesied to happen. And, I think most of us have believed that it was going to happen in our lifetime. And I think, frankly, I think the way it's written, that people have assumed it was going to happen in their lifetime since the time of Christ.
Right.
The amillennialists and the preterists and, people who point to 70 AD would show that, these people clearly believed that these prophecies were prophetic for their time. And I'm sure when they saw the temple being completely destroyed such that not one stone was left upon another, they were fleeing to the wilderness and, just all the horrors that took place there.
Yes.
I read Matthew 24 and I read Luke 21, and then I can get so far. I can get if you do like a checklist of the events that took place as we understand them from, like the writings of Josephus and other people outside of Scripture who documented the events. You can kind of do a checklist, when you're reading like Matthew 24, Luke 21, and go, yep. But I just get to a certain point where I'm like, nope.
Right.
I don't see where that happened in 70 AD.
Yes.
And when you get to Revelation, and what I tried to do a while back was I started doing like an Excel spreadsheet where I would take New Testament prophetic statements and put them on the right column, and then if I could find Old Testament prophetic statements that I thought were parallel, I put them on the left. And there's just way too many, in my opinion, that don't fit anything that has ever happened in human history so far. That's what has me believing that it's a future time. If you want to call it futurism or whatever, I don't care what you want to call it, but that there's a coming 7-year tribulation period, actually maybe a 20-year period. And when I believe it's in I think it's Jeremiah that says it's even the time of Jacob's trouble. That, in his day, whether it was Jeremiah or whoever it was that wrote it, forgive me, I forget what the actual scripture reference is, but where that is in the prophetic writings, the person who wrote that and the audience who read that at that time would have not had a New Testament frame of mind, because they weren't there yet. So when they said it's even the time of Jacob's trouble, they would have thought, well, what was the time of Jacob's trouble? And Paul said that the things that happened in the Torah happened to them to serve as examples for us in his day, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. So, he clearly believed that they're in the ends of the ages, and they believe that the Torah sets the precedence for the roadmap to understanding it. So if you do that, then and I did it a while back, so I don't have all the notes in front of me, but I think it starts. Jacob's trouble starts when he deceives his dad. And then from there he's off and running, and then of course he wants Rachel, and he ends up working for Uncle Laban for 7 years to get Rachel, but then he's not. So you get the firstborn first, you get Leah, so you got to work another 7 years for Rachel. So then he works another 7 years, and the whole time Uncle Laban's jacking with him and messing with him, and he Jacob himself refers to it, the 20-year period of time that he went through, as the time of his affliction. And so affliction, trouble, same thing, synonymous. Then when I saw that, I'm going, okay, so, Torah speaking, then the time of Jacob's trouble would be 20 years, not 3.5 years, not 7 years, but 20 years, within which I would contend the 7 years or 3.5 would be contained, in that period.
Right.
If we are in fact in the time of Jacob's trouble now, when did it begin? I don't know. I mean, I think all of us are speculating. I made a case back in 2013 that there were some very interesting with the tetrads and all that stuff going on.
Yes, absolutely.
That and world events that were happening at that time that led me to believe that could be, and I say could be, the kickoff to the 20-year time period of Jacob's trouble. And we're 7 years into that now, since 2013. So, I don't know. I don't know where we are on the timeline. I just, when you see nation against nation, that's ethnos against ethnos, rise against each other, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, certainly seems to be playing out. But I say that also looking back in history. I mean, the 20th century, dude, there was some real serious crap happening in the 20th century. I mean, when you look at World War I mean, just look at World War I alone. And that's one of those, for many of us, it's almost a forgotten war. I mean, we had relatives that were in World War II, grandparents or whatever, Korean War, Vietnam War. Very few of us grew up with people who experienced World War I. So, for many of us, it's kind of off our radar. We've read about it in school or something. But, when I look back at what was going on in World War I, man, that was some horrific times. And then World War II, they amped up the horror, Right. And then you have both the Korean War and the Vietnam War and the civil unrest that was taking place there, and, the race wars and stuff that was happening back then. I mean, we've been through a lot of crap before. And of course, you got the Great Depression there in the 30s and the Dust Bowl. And, so while things are looking pretty bad for our generation, I would contend that many generations before us had seasons when it looked really bad too. Yes. When the Black Plague, the Spanish flu, and all pandemics that have happened in the past that wiped out entire, huge portions of the population. So I'm trying to be cautious in saying this is the end. This is it. This is the end. When I look back, even just in the 20th century alone, I would contend you could go back through centuries before that and find all kinds of stuff going on too. It was pretty horrific. Let's face it, we've been living in horror since the garden.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So I'm trying to be a watchman, as they say. I'm trying to be cautious. I'm trying to look at the signs of the times and put pieces together. I think with each event we get closer, but how close we are, I don't know.
Right.
I think our study right now of Genesis is helping too, because, Yeshua said it would be as it was in the days of Noah. So
yes.
For me, I've got to not just look at the wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes. These are things that we've always had. Nation against nation, ethnicity against ethnicity, kingdom against kingdom. I mean, we've had that. What differentiates the end times from any other time in human history is the likening of it to the days of Noah, which in itself were unique times. So that's where I keep trying to redirect my focus, and that's where, I'm getting ready for the Take on the World conference coming up. It's the end of this month. It's a virtual conference, so we're going to have everything pre-recorded. I got like 200 slides and video in it right now. I'm like, dude, that's going to be a presentation. So, but what I'm trying to do is paint a really broad stroke version of the big picture.
Yes.
Going back to the garden, working our way forward to the time of the Tower of Babel and the calling of Abraham. Because in my mind, the first 12 chapters of Genesis literally lay out the roadmap for us to understand the end times. And then when you get to the book of Numbers, I mean, that's like a play-by-play for me of what's going to happen in the tribulation period. I mean, you got 42 different cities that the Israelites went to. Coincidence? We got 42 months time period of, tribulation.
Yeah.
I just, they have 1,000 from each of the 12 tribes that are called for men of war. Then we got 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes, in Revelation. There's just, when you look at the plagues of Exodus and put them in a spreadsheet next to the plagues of Revelation, it's a direct parallel. So,
yes.
For me, it's driving me deeper into the Torah to try to understand things from that perspective, as opposed to the standard eschatological Christian perspective that most people come at these events, from without looking at the Torah. And so, I'm going to do sort of a slightly different version of that for our conference. So, for your conference.
Right on.
And I think I got two 1-hour sessions, I think. I don't know what my schedule. So I'm going to have to significantly reduce things. And it's hard to pick a topic,
Right.
I don't know. But anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on all this. And that's why I think what we're doing here is timely and important.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely agree because, looking, and as you said, as in the days of Noah, it's very important to understand those times and to look at them and consider them. And certainly we are doing that at a level and a depth that I don't know that anybody else has really examined as many parallel accounts and brought forth as much information as we are on these particular topics. And going back, even just beginning with Genesis 6 and the fall of the angels, the sons of God and the matings with the daughters of man. I mean, we're still, just 2 chapters in with regard to examining in detail, where we started from several weeks back now. But, again, I think it's a great blessing to many people that have never heard about all of these texts. And certainly I have, even today, some accounts with regard to Noah that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about, and that should add detail to even the study and the understanding of what Christ is alluding to with regard to, looking back at the beginning. And even with Isaiah, when he regards and says to look back to Genesis for understanding on the creation. And so we're kind of doing that in looking back at the early, as far as the patriarchs and the prophets and what they went through to get to where they, and what they went, as far as what they had to overcome. And we're seeing that in the parallel with regard to the end of days. And so, yeah, I think this study is very relevant, and especially since, Take on the World and also with our conference, the End Time Mysteries Revealed, it fits right in with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to find what I was looking at a couple of days ago. I'm going through different things to figure out what I'm going to talk about. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to be going over things I've already talked about, but trying to bring in new insights into it as well. And it was, I want to say, it was in Isaiah. I thought it was in 15, but maybe I'm mistaken. But it was talking about when the Assyrian abused us in Egypt, and the context was the Exodus. And let me see if I might have to look for it during the break, but because I just did a keyword search for Assyrian, but I'm not finding it real quick here. But anyway, it was almost a passing reference. It's like you blink, you miss it kind of thing. But it was when the Assyrian, afflicted us in Egypt, and the whole context was the Exodus. And I came across an article Chuck Missler was writing about how it was saying, when it says a different Pharaoh arose that didn't remember Joseph.
Yes.
And he was saying, like, look, one of the prerequisites for running a country is knowing your country's history, you know, and seeing as that at the time of the Exodus, that was only about 150 years by the time Moses is born. It's like 200 years ago or less. It was less than 200 years to the time of Joseph. It's 215 years from the time Joseph is sold into slavery to the time of the Exodus. So in that time period, Joseph, ruled and reigned as like a, second in charge, and
right.
House of Jacob comes down there. And so, they lived like that for an extended period of time until a Pharaoh arose that did not remember Joseph or did not know him. And so, he was saying, Chuck Missler was talking about, like, what nation, has a leader that doesn't know its own country's recent history? I mean, that'd be like us not knowing, who the president was 100 years ago, and so, I mean, or even like not knowing about Abraham Lincoln, for crying out loud, right? I mean, we're going back to the Civil War here, right? 1800s. I mean, everybody in America, for the most part, knows that story. So what's the deal here? And he was saying, well, if it was an Assyrian that came into the land of Egypt at the time and took over and then set himself up as the Pharaoh, then he wouldn't have known that history. And so it makes a lot of sense. And he was pointing to that scripture, which I can't seem to find right here off the top of my head. But there's certainly, if you just do a keyword search for Assyrian, you're going to find, quite a number of references with regard to the Assyrian and Egypt, kind of side by side. You'll see Egypt and Assyrian. So all that to say, Nimrod was an Assyrian, and so if we are in fact talking about an end times parallel for the Antichrist, and if the thesis is true that I hold to, that the Antichrist is in fact Nimrod, then I mean it's all over again. It's the Assyrian and Egypt, just yet another parallel.
Right.
So now I'm not thinking about Joseph Gregory Hallett or anybody else as a candidate for the Antichrist. It reaffirms some of the earlier research that I've been known for talking about.
Yeah, and the whole thing of uniting the world and having a common goal and being of one people, one tongue, one nation. All of that with the Tower of Babel. Certainly the beast kingdom and moving towards the reign of the Antichrist, the one world system, religion, political, economic, all of that seems to be a replay of sorts of, what went down during Nimrod's time. So something definitely to consider.
I found it. It is Isaiah 52:4. It's 52. I was thinking it was 15. It was 52. Isaiah 52:4. For thus saith the Lord God, my people went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and the Assyrian oppressed them without cause.
Oh, right on.
Isaiah 52:4. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've got just about 3 minutes before break, and so we'll definitely go into it afterwards. But was there a specific something that you wanted to read from?
No, nothing. Nothing much more in regard to what I was just talking about. Although there was something that I saw Zach Bauer posted something from 2nd Ezra chapter 7. He lost his wife. I think it was last year or fairly recently. This year, I forget. Fairly recently, his wife died. But and he's still obviously going through the grieving process. And he posted something today from 2nd Ezra. He says, this gives me great comfort, in my time of mourning. And it was what happens to you after you die, laid out like point blank. I don't know. Looked at it. I've never looked at it before. I mean, seems like I've read the Esdras, 1st, 2nd Esdras quite some time ago when I was intrigued with the Apocrypha, but it was a long time ago. So I don't really remember any of it. So I went back and he just quoted a few verses from it, like 75 through 100 and something. And so I'm going to go back and read the whole chapter. Wow. What a chapter.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's making me want to go like really study it because and my understanding is Esdras is just a derivative spelling of Ezra. So
right, yeah.
This is actually the prophet Ezra writing this. And wow, I mean, you talk about overtly messianic. I mean, it's talking about,
oh, yeah.
when my son comes and does this and does that, and like, wow, pretty hardcore. But I mean, it reads very Enoch-ish, where he's being shown a whole bunch of stuff about, what happens to a person, whether, where the saints go and where people who regard the commandments go, and what, the judgment that awaits them. And wow. I mean, it's just like 150 something verses, I think. Very detailed.
Yes, very detailed. And you're right. It goes into the millennial age and all of that as well. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. September 2018. Extendivite works in keeping my blood pressure in the normal range. I've been using Extendivite for many years now. May 2018. Great product. I use regularly and I rarely get sick. March 2018. This product has relieved what appeared to be angina pain in my chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. I'm quite happy about it. February 2018. My husband, son, and I have been using this product for a few months now, and we have noticed an improvement in our joints and blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928.
The seeker of lost paradise may seem a fool to those who have never sought the other worlds. Christ told us in Revelation to remember from whence thou art fallen and do the first works. What many people don't realize about the fall of humanity is that Adam and Eve were initially bright-natured, and that they were placed into the garden of God to dress and tendant, and that being deceived and tempted and eating from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that in that moment that you touch thereof you shall die, that they come under the authority of death in those moments, and since their fall have been banished from the place of the immortals. This concept becomes very clear in the work of the forgotten Edenic books of Adam and Eve. And as we study and read into this material, this knowledge will come to light, and it will help you to understand that being restored to our bright nature, our first estate through Christ, that the reason he had to take on embodiment and enter into mortal flesh form was in order to not only redeem the ancestors of Adam, the children of light, but also to rectify us and to restore us to our first estate in this manner, defeating death and bringing forth salvation with the promise of the cross.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
back, everybody, for a second portion. As always, the time is just flying by quickly, and so you want to get back into the manuscript?
Yeah. I'm not sure where you want to start. I think we did a couple of chapters, or at least we did Joshua 6 last week. Maybe, I don't know that we've done Jubilees, the parallel passage, or if you want to jump into Genesis 8 as a setup. I don't it's up to you.
Yeah, I'm going to read really quickly from this manuscript about the legends of the patriarchs and prophets about Noah, and then we can move forward and go on to Genesis 8 and all of that. But I'll just share this because this is another one of those that a lot of people don't know about, and it'll give us some insight into this story as well. So this is from the Noah portion. The earth being filled with violence, God resolved on its destruction, but Noah the just he purposed to save alive. On the words of Genesis, all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. The Rabbi Yohanan taught that not only was the race of men utterly demoralized, but also all the races of animals. Noah and his family and one pair of all the beasts of earth were to be saved in the ark. But of every clean beast, 7 were to enter in. Falsehood has hastened to the ark and asked to be admitted. Noah refused. I admit the animals only in pairs, said he. Then Falsehood went away in wrath and met Injustice, who said, Why art thou so sad? I have been refused admittance into the ark, for I am single, said Falsehood. Be thou my companion. See now, answered Injustice, I take no companionship without prospect of gain. Fear not, said Falsehood, I would spread the toils, and thou shalt have the booty. And so they went together to the ark, and Noah was unable to refuse them admission. And when the flood was past, and the beasts went forth out of the ark, Falsehood said angrily, I have done my work and have caused evil, but thou hast all the plunder. Share with me. Thou fool, answered Injustice, dost thou forget the agreement? Thine it is to spread the net, mine alone to take the spoil. At the time of the deluge, the giants were not all drowned, for Og planted his foot upon the fountains of the great deep, and with his hands stopped the windows of heaven, or the water would have risen over his head. Rabbi Eliezer said that the giants exclaimed when the flood broke out, If all the waters of the earth be gathered together, they will only reach our waist. But if the fountains of the great deep be broken up, we must stamp them down again. And this they did, but God made the waters boiling hot, and it scalded them, so that their flesh was boiled and fell off their bones. But what became of Og in the deluge, we learn from the Talmud. He went into the water along with a rhinoceros or unicorn beside the ark and clung to it. And now the water round the ark was cold, but all the rest was boiling hot. Thus he was saved alive, whereas the other giants perished. According to another authority, Og climbed on the roof of the ark, and on Noah attempting to dislodge him, he swore that if allowed to remain there, he and his posterity would be the slaves of the sons of Noah. And thereupon the patriarch yielded. He bored a hole in the side of the vessel and passed through it every day the food necessary for the giants' consumption. It is asserted by some rabbinic writers that the deluge did not overflow the land of Israel, but was partial. Some say the Holy Land was alone left dry, and a rhinoceros had taken refuge on it, or a unicorn, and so escaped being drowned. But others say that the land of Israel was submerged, though all agree that the rhinoceros unicorn survived without having entered the ark. And they explain the escape of this in this manner. Its head was taken into the ark, and it swam behind the vessel. Now the rhinoceros is a very large animal and could not be admitted into the ark lest it should swamp it. The Rabbi Yanai says he saw a young rhinoceros of a day old, and it was as big as Mount Tabor, and Tabor's dimensions are 40 miles. Its neck was 3 miles long, and its head 1/2 mile. it dropped dung, and the dung choked up the Jordan. Other commentators object that the head was too large to be admitted to the ark, and suppose that the only tip of its nose was received. But as the ark swayed on the waters, Noah tied the horn of the rhinoceros to the side of the vessel, lest the beast's nose should slip off in a lurch of the ark. All this is from the Talmud. Let us now turn to some of the Musulman legends of Noah. Noah built the ark with our assistance and that of the angels, following the knowledge we revealed him, and we said to him, speak no more in behalf of the sinners, they shall be drowned. And whilst Noah was building his ark, all those who passed by mocked him. But he said to them, though you rail at me now, the time will come when I shall rail at you. For you will learn to your cost who it is that punished the wicked in this world and reserves for them a further punishment in the world to come. I'm going to stop here and just bring one more something from the Perked Rabbi Eleazar, and then we'll move on in story. I had read about how the angels had helped previously, but I'll skip down a little bit more from that portion. It says, Rabbi Manna said, when all the creatures had entered the ark, the Holy One, blessed be he, closed and sealed with his hand the gate of the ark, as it is said, and the Lord shut him in. Rabbi Meir said that one pearl was suspended in the ark and shed light upon all the creatures in the ark, like a lamp which gives light inside the house, and like the sun yonder which shines in his might, as it is said, a light shalt thou make to the ark. From the Targum it says, go thou unto Pison, and take from thence a precious stone, and fix it in the ark to illuminate you. With the measure of a cubit or a span shalt thou complete it above. Rabbi Zadok said that on the 10th of Marshavan all the creatures entered the ark, and on the 17th of the same month the waters of the flood descended from heaven upon the earth, for they were the waters endowed with the male principle. And they came up the waters of the depths, for they are the waters endowed with the female principle. And they were joined with one another, and they prevailed so as to destroy the world. As it is said, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the living things which were upon the face of the earth decayed. And every living thing was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, except Noah and those who were with him in the ark. And Noah only was left, and they that were with him in the ark, except Og, king of Bashan, who sat down on a piece of wood under the gutter of the ark. He swore to Noah and to his sons that he would be their servants forever. What did Noah do? He bored an aperture in the ark, and he put through it the food daily for him. And he also was left, as it is says, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. And from the Targum of Jonathan, Genesis 14, it says, and Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, had ridden protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord, and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against the Lord of the world, and perished from off of the earth? And Noah only remained, except Og, the king of Bashan, who sat on the beam of the ladders which projected from the ark, and swore to Noah and his sons that he would be their slave forever. Noah made a hole in the ark through which he had handed to Og his daily food. Thus he also remained, as it is said. That's the Perked Rabbi Eleazar as well. Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Well, so, I mean, I've heard several of these before. People usually accuse me when I'm talking about Josh or Enoch or anything like that of talking about Jewish fables.
Uh-huh.
And I would differentiate certainly Enoch and Joshua, and probably I would put Jubilees in there also. I would differentiate those from Jewish fables.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, some of the stuff that you're reading there, would, in my mind, fit the category of Jewish fables.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, like, I've got the timeline world chart of the wall chart of world history, and I'm looking from the time of the Exodus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 years. So the Exodus, according to this timeline, is about 900 years after the flood. So, how old would Og have to be? First of all, the size that they describe him as, plugging up the water. I mean, to say that he and the giants were going to try to stop the fountains of the great deep from breaking up, that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me. And, making the water really hot also makes sense to me, that those geysers would have been very hot. I don't believe he would have been certainly tall enough to reach the torrents of heaven that were opened up. And for him to be hanging on the ark for a year during the flood really seems to stretch it for me. And the size that we are given of his bedstead, when we read the Torah, I mean, he's only 15 to 18 feet tall, conservatively speaking, when people convert the length of the cubits that are given there.
Right.
Now, it does say that he's the last of the remnants of the Raphaim. Mm-hmm. And so that begs the question, what's that about? What is that? And Raphaim, that's an interesting word, because it's like, we have many names for, Yahuwah God, Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, Jehovah, but we also have like El Shaddai, El Elyon, other titles for the Most High. One of them being Jehovah Rapha, and Rapha meaning my healer, God my healer, and Raphaim having the same root word. It has this connotation of healing and even resurrection from the dead. So when they're talking about the Raphaim, those are also understood to be giants, throughout the when they reference them. So it's almost like they're the living dead ones. I have these images in my mind when I look into the definition of the words of them being like almost like zombies. So I don't know what to make of that. I mean, and with the unicorn / rhino being that massive, our first knee-jerk reaction is like, that's absurd, because
of course,
rhinos aren't that big. However, I'm sure you've looked into the mud fossil deal, and some of the people that are out there, I forget his name now. I think he's in Spain. There's a mountain range up there that, I mean, even on Google Earth, it looks like an elephant.
Right.
And
it's the Elephant Island, right?
Yeah, and this guy has gone into, there's various caves in it, and I guess he understands anatomy, and was showing how, well, if this is an eye socket, because that's what it looks like it would be, positionally on the mountain, if it was an elephant. There's a cave there that looks like it, if it was an elephant, it would be an eye socket. He said, well, if it is an eye socket, then there should be other openings for, nerve endings and things that would, feed into the eye socket, and looking at the anatomy of an elephant, figuring out where these various holes would be in the skull, and finding that there are, in fact, holes in the mountain that, very closely or almost exactly match, anatomically what would be in a skeleton. So, he's making, I don't know how I would phrase this, other than to say interesting correlation. That, I mean, you really do have to step back and go, that is interesting. And Michael Tellinger, when I got to sit down and talk with him a bit at the Contact in the Desert conference last year, he's got books out now talking about, various rocks that, people are finding that, that's not a rock, that's a petrified heart.
Yes, human body part, or not human, but
animal, human, or various
some kind of body part. Yeah,
it's petrified soft tissue organs.
Right.
And other people start to look around like, okay, well, if this is a heart, then there should be a hole here for, arteries or what have you, and compartments of the heart and whatnot. And when you look at the rock, you're like, well, sure enough, I mean, it's got the various compartments of the heart. It happens to have a hole right where, veins and arteries should be. So in that regard, I think, I mean, and there's stuff in you can't even tell anymore whether or not you're looking at something real or it's CGI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, knowing how easy it is to create stuff with software today, when I see a mountain range that just so happens to look like a person laying on their side, I don't know, unless I was physically there,
Right.
not going to believe it. If I was flying in an airplane looking down and it looked like a person in a fetal position from above, then I might be like, and I took a picture with my iPhone or something, looking out the window. Okay, then I would probably go, well, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I don't know what to make of some of the things. I do believe things in the pre-flood world certainly got massively bigger than what we have today. But some of the sizes that we read about are just crazy. And so when I hear what you were reading earlier, I tend to classify those in the Jewish fable category.
Yeah, I agree. Because there are, even in books of Jewish lore, stories of Og and the flood that account this whole kind of same thing. But,
An uncommon story.
Right. And, even reading these, I'm not in any way asserting that this, is factual or anything. I do find it to be interesting. But, even the whole narrative of Jasher and when Moshe goes up and fights against Og and even Sihon, it says that Og lifted up this huge mountain and he had to jump up and slice him on the back, I guess, of what was his Achilles tendon, and that caused him to fall, and then this mountain to collapse on top of him. But he's, said to be of large stature in that particular text as well. Maybe not as big as what is asserted here, but and I'm not, it's difficult to believe, the size and the assertions of the giants, and certainly the 3,000 ells and 450 feet tall. It seems absolutely unbelievable. But as you said, with regard to the mud fossils and some of that work and some of that information, and people looking at Google Earth and looking at these different mountains and landscapes, and how it seems to even some look exactly like giants, some of the mountains, because I've had a lot of people send me a lot of pictures from, and you don't know, of course, you don't know what's photoshopped and what is factual, what is truthful, but I've seen even like the Elephant Island and other mountains that look like horses, and even toads and mushrooms and all kind of just weird, items, things, pre-flood creatures, things that look like golems or trolls or, things of that nature as well. And they seem all to be petrified and turned into the rocks and the landscape. And like, what you're saying with Tellinger, Roger over there at Mud Fossil University, he also is saying that a lot of what we see in these preserved, petrified rocks and things are the same thing, old body parts in some manner.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for these people, in biblical times, storytelling is not something new, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. When I was looking into the Epic of Gilgamesh, I've got a book, Myths from Mesopotamia, Oxford Press, by Stephanie Daly. And I think it was in the preface or introduction or something, she's talking about how there are multiple versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And what she was saying is, like, look, I mean, they didn't have an in-flight movie. They didn't, when people were caravanning and going on journeys, especially people of nobility, they would hire the Shakespeare of the day, the best they could get, to go to entertain the troops, so to speak.
Right.
And any good orator is going to know his audience, So a lot of times you'll find the story changes based on where it was told, because the narrator is customizing the story to fit, the region that they're in, and, maybe incorporating things to, spice up the story a bit. And so that's why you have different versions of it. So, in literary scholarship, I don't know too many people that take the Epic of Gilgamesh to be a word-for-word factual event, so much as a stylized narrative, probably based on historical event. And I would say it's probably based on the life of Nimrod, who was certainly a man of renown. I mean, he was the king of the world when we get to Genesis chapter 11. Mm-hmm. So the idea that many stories could have been embellished and elaborated on related to him is more than plausible. And likewise, when you think of characters like Aga Bashan, who clearly was a pretty substantial character of the day, because they make quite a deal of it, about the defeat of him. And when they finally get into Canaan, when they get to Jericho, it was Rahab, she's like, well, we've all heard of you guys.
Right, yes.
We know what you guys did. You guys took down Og and, Sihon. And so,
Sihon, right.
The idea that these guys could have been embellished to be much larger than life, so to speak, is more than reasonable. But when we think about the 3,000 elves deal, I mean, if you accept Josephus, who says, the Nephilim were what the Greeks called the Titans, then, the first generation angel human hybrid Nephilim being the Titans, well, I mean, in their myth, Kronos and the like, the Titans, they got that big. I mean, they're even depicted in, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief movies and Wrath of the Titans movies. They depict them as a 450-footer. So, all we can do is say, look, I didn't write it.
Yes, exactly.
Comment on it.
Right. And remember the pictures, the Sumerians, where they are seated on their thrones, and, you have these human servants coming before them. Even seated, they are much taller. And I think these servants come up to what maybe knee or chest level, but so that has to be based on something as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's, the Egyptians certainly have plenty of tomb paintings and whatnot showing, dudes sitting down, and you say, well, maybe it's perspective, right? Maybe the king and queen are in the foreground and the people are in the background, except for when you see the pictures of, them holding a dude in their hand, or,
right.
or a dude standing on their knee, somebody fixing their hair on a, on a stepladder kind of thing or whatever, you either have to believe that they're talking about little people, leprechaun type people, or fairies or whatever, or we're talking about giants being serviced by regular sized people. But I mean, you see the same thing in the Sumerians and many different cultures.
Yeah, the depiction of Gilgamesh with the lion that looks like a little kitty cat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean that I if he is in fact Nimrod, that places him in the roughly 10-foot ballpark, which I would say is probably reasonable. If that's a full-size lion, he's in the 10 or 12 foot. And when it comes to the Antichrist, people got to realize that he's called a beast. Okay. And that's the word therion. And my friend Peter, who grew up in Greece, speaks Greek fluently. I asked him one day, I'm like, dude, if I called you a therion, what did I just say? What did you hear? He said, well, that'd be like you called me a werewolf or something. I'm like, really?
Wow.
It's not the same word in Greek that you would use for to describe a horse or cow, a beast of burden kind of thing. It's something different, corrupted, freaky, I mean, he's the kind of guy I don't usually tell. He has no dog in the hunt, so he has no idea why I'm asking the question.
Right.
Hey, dude, what's therion mean? What, if I called you that? So he just gives me the answer, So, I mean, yes, there are bad and evil people in the world, but I mean, this character is called a beast, a therion, a werewolf, kind of thing. So it makes you think of Nebuchadnezzar as a type and shadow. I mean, the dude became a beast.
Right. Yes.
There's something going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
hmm Yeah, and then just with regard to the mythology and to even to fairy tales and lore and fantasy, there seems to be some kind of truth behind all of it. As to how much and what exactly, nobody really knows. But um, considering in reading a lot of the extra biblical materials, again, we're gaining insight into even the meaning of as in the days of Noah. So, um, want to go into chapter 8?
Uh,
Well,
just
when we come back from break. Yeah.
I dude.
All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for second half.
This
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. Sacred Word Revealed
Comes to Atlanta, Georgia.
On September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
purpose to reveal end time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
We must don the full armor of God.
featuring Zen Garcia,
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Zen Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
second hour, we are going to return to the narrative. And do you remember where we are as far as Genesis?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as Genesis, we read Genesis 6 and 7. So we could read Genesis 8. We could read the parallel in Jubilees of Jubilees 5 and 6. If you wanted to go there.
Yeah, I think Jubilees 6 is quite interesting as well, since it speaks of, the times and as far as the calendar and Sabbath, all of that getting lost as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Jubilees 5 talks a little bit about the torrents of the waters and stuff, as far as the mechanics of the flood.
All right, cool. I'll follow your lead.
So, all right, I can read Genesis 8, and if you want to get queued up on Jubilees 5.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, let me switch over to Genesis 8. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. That means came and went. And wind there, that's ruach, for those keeping track. Very similar to Genesis 1. He put this in the Spirit of God moved across the face of the waters, and the ruach moved across the face of the waters. Same thing here in Genesis 8:1. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned. I think did we read this last time?
Possibly. I was flipping through Jubilee, so I'm not.
Because it seems like we read the bird thing, because he sends the bird to and fro.
Yeah.
Unless maybe that was in Joshua.
We've been reading so many accounts.
No, we did read this. Well, because it ends with while earth remaineth, seedtime and harvest. So we did read that. So maybe we just jump into the Jubilees account, because from Genesis 9 forward, we're going to start getting into some really deep stuff in terms of lineages and things leading up to the Tower of Babel. So I'm pretty sure I read that already, because I remember the bird deal, releasing the birds and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe if you want to read Jubilees 5, I can read Jubilees 6.
All right, let me see. Okay. The building of the ark, the flood. That's
heading.
It, right?
I believe that's the heading. I don't have a heading on mine.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay, verse 21. And he commanded Noah to make him an ark, that he might save himself from the waters of the flood. And Noah made the ark in all respects as he commanded him. In the 27th Jubilee of years, in the 5th week, in the 5th year, on the new moon of the 1st month. And he entered in the 6th year thereof, in the 2nd month, on the new moon of the 2nd month, till the 16th, and he entered in all that we brought to him into the ark, and the Lord closed it from without on the 17th evening. That's interesting, because isn't it the angels that are speaking to
Moses?
Noah? Moses, about the Book of Jubilees, and it seems, because it says, as in the Targum, the Perkti Rabbi Eleazar, all that we brought to him, so that would indicate that the angels had brought the animals.
Yeah, that's my understanding of Jubilees, is that it's sort of an angelic view of the events of the Torah.
Yeah, so that would make sense, and this would be a third confirming witness that all the creatures were brought by the angels to Noah. All right, continuing, verse 24. And the Lord opened 7 floodgates of heaven, and the mouths of the fountains of the great deep, 7 mouths in number. And the floodgates began to pour down water from the heavens 40 days and 40 nights. And the fountains of the deep also sent up waters until the whole world was full of water. And the waters increased upon the earth. 15 cubits did the waters rise above all the high mountains. And the ark was lifted up above the earth, and it moved upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed on the face of the earth 5 months, 150 days, and the ark went and rested on the top of Lubar, one of the mountains of Ararat. And on the new moon in the 4th month, the mountains of the great deep were closed, and the floodgates of heaven were restrained. And on the new moon of the 7th month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the water began to descend into the deep below. And on the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and on the new moon of the 1st month, the ark became visible. And the waters disappeared from above the earth in the 5th week in the 7th year thereof. And on the 17th day in the 2nd month of the earth was dry. And on the 27th thereof, he opened the ark and sent forth from it beasts and cattle, birds, and every moving thing.
So, I mean, what is interesting about Jubilees, although we've talked about it before, the dates don't always correspond with what we see in books like Joshua or even in Genesis. Dates are different, but I haven't taken the time, I don't know if you have, to connect these dates with what is spoken of in Genesis. This seems to give you a lot more detail than what Genesis does.
Right. No, I haven't, but this one fits in with what I was reading from, it's either the Legends of the Jews or the Perk-Day Rabbi Eleazar. They speak about the same thing, and there's the mention of the new moons in the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th months, I believe. Yeah,
that's interesting. And it says verse 29 there about and it's always on the new moon. That's kind of interesting.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like he's actually starting and stopping events, on the 1st of the month.
Yes, the beginning of the month is on the new moon.
Yeah. And fountains deeps closed, and the floodgates of heaven. And we talked about that in an earlier broadcast too, when I was asking my friend, what does this word mean? And he's like, yeah, I think Hoover Dam. Like, that's like a big deal. We look at the Septuagint, the words used for the windows of heaven. That's like, it's floodgates, dude. I mean, that's like, it's not rain.
Right.
It's not clouds dropping rain. I mean, this is a physical structure opening up and massive, like you just imagine Hoover Dam breaking.
Right.
The kind of water that's coming down here. And it talks about, in the new moon of the 7th month, so that would be Tishri 1.
Right.
Mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the water began to descend into the deep below. So water came up from the deep and then went back into the deep.
Right.
As well as obviously the windows of heaven issue. And let me see if I can pull up my Testing the Globe website. Those watching on YouTube, Testing the Globe, if you go to testingtheglobe.com, and the main menu, click on the More Resources tab, and then Enoch's Dome World. So the model that I've created, I call the Yahuwah Triangle. Not Yahuwah Triangle, that's a different video. The Yahuwah Terrarium, sorry. The Yahuwah Terrarium. It's funny because I did the whole teaching. It's like a 10-hour teaching called the Yahuwah Triangle. And the first hour or two is all globe stuff. And that was December 2014 when I did that. And then, 4 or 5 months later, all of a sudden, nope. I get into this and see something different. But in the model that I created, I show a cutaway, and there are these boxes on the sides of it. And what I was depicting there was the storehouses of the deep. Mm-hmm. Is that you would read references to storehouses of the deep, and I'm like, what is that? Because if the dome is like a bathysphere inside of water, so there's a pocket of air in it, and there's water all around it, the fountains of the deep all around the thing, and water comes in from above as a result of the windows of heaven opening. Where does the water go?
Yeah, that's right.
And so I envisioned they would go into the storehouses of the deep, that there would be these other compartments through which the water, that was filling the container could be pumped into, so for people who are wondering what those boxes were, that's why I created those, is because of that, and because of references like what we just read. that the abysses of the earth were open and the water began to descend into the deep below.
Right.
Speculation, admittedly, this is just, as an artist, this is what I see in my head when I read these.
Yeah, and it does say in some of the parallel accounts of just, the dry land being elevated above the sea level in the creation week when I did the book on the firmament, that the earth was porous and that there are many cavities as well, and also lakes, and water that are part of the interior of the earth. And so these kind of things are, and that the earth was described as like being a sponge as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I can read chapter 6 if you want.
Yes.
Unless there's anything else you want to comment on in the Jubilees.
No, because chapter 6 also makes mention of and kind of brings forth, according to the heavenly tablets, the timings of the flood in similarity as this. So we can, comment then.
Okay. And on the new moon of the 3rd month, he went forth from the ark and built an altar on that mountain. And he made atonement for the earth and took a kid and made atonement by its blood for all the guilt of the earth, for everything that had been on it had been destroyed, save those that were on the ark with Noah. And he placed the fat thereof on the altar, and he took an ox and a goat and a sheep and kids and salt and a turtle dove and the young of a dove, and placed a burnt sacrifice on the altar and poured thereon an offering mingled with oil, and sprinkled wine and strewed frankincense over everything, and caused a goodly savor to arise, acceptable before the Lord. And the Lord smelt the goodly savor, and he made a covenant with him that there should not be any more blood to destroy the earth, that all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, should never cease. Cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night should not change their, scroll it up here, order, nor cease forever. And you increase ye and multiply upon the earth, and become many upon it, and be a blessing upon it. The fear of you and the dread of you I will inspire in everything that is on earth and in the sea. And behold, I have given unto you all beasts, and all winged things, and everything that moves on the earth, and the fish in the waters, and all things for food, as the green herbs I have given you all things to eat. But flesh with the life thereof, with the blood ye shall not eat, for the life of all flesh is in the blood, lest your blood be your, and lest your blood of your lives be required. At the hand of every man, at the hand of every beast, will I require the blood of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And you increase ye and multiply on the earth. And Noah and his sons swore that they would not eat any blood that was in any flesh. And he made a covenant before the Lord God forever throughout all the generations of the earth in this month. On this account he spake to thee that thou shouldest make a covenant with the children of Israel in this month upon the mountain with an oath, and that thou shouldest sprinkle blood upon them because of all the words of the covenant which the Lord made with them forever. And this testimony is written concerning you, that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth. And the man who eats the blood of beasts or of cattle or of birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land. And do thou command the children of Israel to eat no blood, so that their names and their seed may be before the Lord our God continually. And for this law there is no limit of days, for it is forever. It's not going to end at the cross. They shall observe it all through their generations, so that they may continue supplicating on your behalf with blood before the altar every day, and at the time of morning and evening they shall seek forgiveness on your behalf perpetually before the Lord, that they may keep it and not be rooted out. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. He set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah, 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham, and they eat blood. But Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to thy days, and in thy days the children of Israel forgot it until ye celebrated it anew on this mountain. And do thou command the children of Israel to observe this festival in all their generations for a commandment unto them. 1 day in the year, in this month, they shall celebrate the festival. For it is the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of First Fruits, and the Feast of... It is twofold and of a double nature, according to what is written and engraven concerning it. Celebrate it. For I have written in the book of the first law, in that which I have written for thee, that thou shouldest celebrate it in its seasons 1 day in the year. And I explained to thee its sacrifices, and the children of Israel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month 1 day in every year. And on the new moon of the first month, and on the new moon of the 4th month, and on the new moon of the 7th month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever. And Noah ordained them for himself as feasts for the generations forever, so that they have become thereby a memorial unto him. And on the new moon of the 1st month, he was bidden to make for himself an ark. And on that day the earth became dry, and he opened the ark and saw the earth. And on the new moon of the 4th month, the mouths of the depths of the abyss beneath were closed. And on the new moon of the 7th month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the waters began to descend into them. And on the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. On this account he ordained them for himself as feasts for memorial forever, and thus they ordained. And they placed them on the heavenly tablets. Each had 13 weeks from one to another past their memorial, from the 1st to the 2nd, and from the 2nd to the 3rd, and from the 3rd to the 4th. And all the days of the commandments will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets. And there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year. And command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the stars, of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from henceforth will I declare it unto thee, it is not of my own devising, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day, Christmas, Easter, and they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy, for they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to thee, that thou mayest testify to them. For after thy death thy children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason, they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Wow, stuff there.
Yeah, it's a lot. And with regard to the calendar, there's mention of the 364 day, which is the solar calendar, also cited by Enoch in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And then there's the mention of the lunar calendar and how it comes in 10 days too short. And so it's my personal interpretation that the Jubilees is speaking about in similarity with the Book of Enoch, that you have to consider both the 364-day solar calendar and the 354-day lunar calendar and how they intercalate with one another, where you have to add this 13th month every, according to, what is the metatonic cycle, almost every third year or so, you just add this 13th month and it aligns the two calendars back in sync together. And I think that, the reason it makes mention of the new moons in connections, it shows that the new moons are the beginning of the months according to the calendar, which they may have been observing at that time. And that certainly looking at some of the older texts, even like the Legends of the Jews and the Perkti Rabbi Eleazar, and we talked about this when we talked about the other calendar stuff, that it seems to also link, like in the Book of Enoch, he mentions the waxing crescent as being the beginning of the month as well. And that, here all the new moons, and it's not full moon like, some people believe, but the waxing crescent, which even the word kadash is in verb, it means to repair or renew itself, which is exactly what the moon begins to do with the appearance of the waxing crescent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a conjunctionist for a while when I first came into all this understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It was trying to understand, what is a new moon, what is all that, and I thought like 119 Ministries and a few others were making a compelling case for the conjunction, but the more I started trying to figure out how that would work, it needs to be as simple as a shepherd boy looking up in the sky and being able to discern things.
Yes, and seeing it, actually seeing something, which you can't see the dark moon.
Yeah, and you'd have to be a perfect mathematician that understands the cycles and how they all work, and when the exact precise moment the moon goes into conjunction, which you can't.
Right. Yeah, you can't.
A shepherd boy, maybe an astrophysicist might be able to predict that, but just a shepherd boy walking around in the field is not going to be able to tell the times and stuff like that. And actually, I thought I had a pretty rock solid case on conjunction, but we had a guy come to our home fellowship that, like, his whole thing, like, with you and I, it might be Nephilim or biblical cosmology, this sort of art become known by. His thing was the calendar. And like for 30 years, the guy's been studying a thing. And he came, and for like 3 hours, I played the Yabut game with him. And everything, I'd be like, well, Yabut, and he would just slam dunk me with a scripture or, some kind of reference. I'm like, by the end of it, I was like, okay, uncle, I give, you win. And I crossed over to the crescent. And that kind of really helped me out a lot too, because I was having a hard time reconciling the birth of Christ with September 11th, even though the Cerularium clearly showed the alignment.
Yes.
Revelation 12, 1-5. The problem that I had was the moon at his feet was a new crescent. It wasn't a conjunction. And so when I finally converted over to the crescent, then Revelation 12, 1-5 was a perfect fit.
Right.
For September 11th, with the new moon at her feet, the perfect alignment.
Yes.
Tishri 1.
Tishri 1, exactly. Yom Teruah.
Yeah. So pretty interesting. Some people in the chat room are saying, Jesus' blood made all foods, all meat clean. That's simply not true. I would direct people's attention, if they want to learn more on that, to go to virtualhousechurch.com. And on the left-hand menu, scroll down to where it says Leviticus week 26, Shemini. And that gets into the dietary laws in the Torah. And then it also, that page has lots of notes addressing the mistranslations, frankly, of Mark 7:19. And what this actually means, and the fact that even secular scientists who have no dog in this hunt, could care less about the Bible, much less the Torah, have proven that the same animals that the Torah calls unclean are bad for you.
Right.
Secular science even confirms this. You go figure, right? Yahuwah might actually know how he created the animals and how he created our bodies and what's compatible and what's not. What
we should eat and what we shouldn't.
Yeah, sorry, no. Yeshua's death on the cross did not change biology of animals and humans.
And what's bad for you and what isn't.
And you got hunters and people out there that sort of a tradition. It's like you kill your first deer and you drink the blood. Like the berserkers.
All right. Hold on, brother. We'll pick it up on the other side. We'll be right back, everyone.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Everyday questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. Sacred Word Revealed
comes to Atlanta, Georgia
on September 11th to the 13th, 2020.
Purpose to reveal end time mysteries.
To prepare the final generation,
we must don the full armor of God.
Featuring Zen Garcia.
Dr. Joy Pugh,
Rob Skiba,
Gary Wayne,
Yana Ben Noon,
Stephen Benoon,
Dr. Stephen Pigeon,
Zen Garcia,
Laurel Austin,
Nathan Reynolds. Buy your tickets now at sacredwordrevealed.com.
Flesh of animals for food, which had been forbidden from the time of Adam until then, but they were to abstain from the use of blood. I know you were talking about something when we had went to break in regard to blood, was it?
Yeah. Well, I look back. I was doing some study on the berserkers, like during the early conquests and stuff, where the Romans were going up against the Germanic tribes and stuff, and that was a real deal. I mean, like they would kill like a bear and drink the blood, and like they'd go berserk. I mean, they and other cultures did this too. The Vikings and different people that they believed that they were taking on, and in fact, I believe that they were taking on, quote unquote, the spirit of the animal, because the life is in the blood. So, it's definitely not a biblical activity to be drinking blood of any kind. Animal, certainly not human. So, I mean, you got the vampires drinking human blood, and Luciferians and Satanists and people doing stuff like that. But even animal blood. So, for me, ultimately, I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm not telling anybody else what to do. I'm just saying what I'm doing for myself. So, nobody needs to get their panties all bunched up here. I'm just saying that I personally got to the point where I just like, I'm not going to eat animals. I still eat fish every now and then. But for the most part, these days, I'm almost completely vegetarian.
That is awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah. And I feel much better, ultimately. When Rick Hummer and I were doing the balloon chasing stuff that we were doing, when we were doing the high altitude balloon launches and stuff, it was by a chicken farm, one of those big industrial type chicken farms, and just the horrific
smell. Oh my God.
Just the smell. I'm talking about the horrific conditions these poor animals
that too. Yeah.
To endure, and just the method by which most food enters the grocery store is completely just horrifying. I mean, it's just look. I mean, I went over to John Pounder's house. So it was sometime around Passover, and they still had some lamb left over. Now, in this case, they actually raised the lamb. They had it out in their yard. It was well cared for, lived well in a nice open space, and they killed it humanely and cooked it. And I didn't have a problem eating that, but it's just that, in principle, I don't have a problem with eating meat. But when I started looking at just the way the meat packaging industry is set up and what the trauma, and I'm not just talking about the horrors of the GMO side of it and the hormones and the shots and all the stuff that they pump these animals, to try to get them beefier or whatever, pardon the pun, beefier, but, more bulked up, so they have more meat. And just, I mean, you're eating Franken food nowadays.
Right.
It is just, so, I mean, there's the whole aspect of the genetic manipulation, the Franken food, but just the horrific conditions these animals live in and the experience that they have prior to being slaughtered, as they're watching others in front of them being slaughtered. I mean, you're eating all of that toxic fear. You talk about adrenochrome and stuff. I mean, the body exerts, excretes all these various fight or flight, chemicals. And I mean, you're eating that trauma, and after that trip, I'm like, I'm done. I can't do that anymore. And for those who are interested, there's actually a service that I found called trifecta.com. I think it's trifecta.com. And you can pick, if you want just your standard meat and potatoes, you can get that. Or if you want, vegan, if that's your choice, vegan, prepared food or vegetarian food or keto food. You can pick what you want, and every week they ship it to my house, and it's all non-GMO, cooked by chefs, and all you got to do is heat it up. And so, yeah, I've been doing quite well on that. But
Awesome.
all that to say, I started in my journey of Torah and coming off of eating unclean stuff, and then just making sure I'm not eating blood, and then progress from there to just like, okay, I can't support the current meat industry. So ultimately everything was vegetarian in the garden. After the flood, well, the whole earth was destroyed. So obviously it's going to take a while, and we know as we're trying to grow a garden in the backyard, food takes a while to grow. So, obviously they had depleted their food on the ark because they all ate it. When they got off the ark, the earth was recovering from being covered with water for a year. So it makes sense for Yahuwah to say, okay, now you can eat other stuff. But, within 800 years or so, you have Moses, and then he lays out, okay, this is what shall be food for you, and this is what should not be food for you. And we see in that portion from Jubilees that the angels saying, you know what, here's the people who kept it, here's the people who screwed up, and after you die, even though you're telling the Israelites what to do, they're going to screw up again.
Right.
So
well, that's really awesome. I've been trying myself to move towards that direction, but haven't fully made that transition. But I just recently saw it was a video about just superbugs, and it was talking about, because of the conditions that the animals are raised in and how horrific and sickly they are because of those conditions, that they are just fed massive amounts of antibodies just to keep them alive, to the point where they can be slaughtered and then processed and then put into the market so that people can eat them. And how, because of that happening, there are now viruses, bacteria, infections that are superbugs, and that the doctors and the medical establishments are unable to help people to get rid of them because of the overuse of antibodies in just the meat industry, and how it's causing as far as people's immunity and their health and their well-being, it's really affecting them adversely, and people don't even realize. And then a lot of the food allergies and things of that nature also come about because of the weirdness that as far as they will take all the remains of the slaughter of cattle and feed it to pigs. They don't eat like regular stuff that they would otherwise, but they're eating all of this leftover, and then they feed what is the slaughter of the pigs to chickens or whatever. And so it's just they are using the leftover remains of animals to be the food products for other creatures that should not be living on or even consuming or sustaining themselves on that type of consumption. And so it's causing the whole mad cow disease and all that kind of stuff. It's just weirdness. Frankenfoods is exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The conditions are. All you have to do is look into it. Anybody out there, you just look into it. It is so horrifying. It's unbelievable. And so I'm like, nope, I just can't do that anymore. The website was trifectanutrition.com, and I actually put a referral link in the chat room if anybody's interested in checking it out.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna check that out.
And it's really good portions too, man. I calculated how much money we were spending at a grocery store, and it's pretty cool because we try to eat organic as much as shopping at organic places for food. And so, calculating what I was typically spending, a place like Sprouts is a place that we go to. It's a organic.
Yeah.
It was comparable in price. And so like every Thursday, it's either Thursday or Friday, I get a box, shows up at my door, and it's all there. And it's, So if you're counting calories and all that stuff, that helps too, because it tells you right on the label exactly how much protein and calories and whatnot you're getting, and you can choose the different meals. So that's the solution that's been working for me. But I mean, it is interesting, that this stuff was all the way back, and the angels trying to tell all this stuff to Moses, about what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, and how everything would get off kilter as far as even the Sabbath, the calendar, even the cosmology, and now everything is so turned upside down. The holy days are now holidays and mixed in paganism, and most people are unwittingly supporting in mainstream churches, what is paganism? I mean, they even celebrate Halloween. They eat ham. All these things.
Festival. I mean, they'll because the churches they'll recognize Halloween as blatantly pagan evil, right? So then what do? They say they'll have fall festival. It just
right. A harvest festival.
Yeah, harvest festival. It just so happens to fall on the same date as Halloween does.
Halloween, right?
While they're dismissing the actual fall feast.
Yes, exactly right.
I mean, I believe that we're not held accountable for what we don't know.
Yes, I agree.
So, myself included, I mean, most of us have played the game. I was a mall Santa. Okay. I toured the country with Alvin and the Chipmunks on the Christmas tour and played Santa Claus, yes, I had to use a lot of fat pads to pull that off, but I mean, we played the game. Christmas was like one of my favorite times of the year. I used to love it. And I wrote, direct, and played Jesus and Passion plays from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. I did all that stuff, and all the time I'm thinking I'm serving and honoring the God that I claim to believe in.
Right.
What really broke my heart is the Pharisees came to Yeshua and said, give us a sign. He's, well, the only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah, 3 days, 3 nights, and you can't get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday to Sunday. I mean, that's some seriously fuzzy math there. You can't, even math isn't going to give you that, So what broke my heart is, all the times I was doing all that, I was actually denying the only sign he gave.
Right.
But as I became aware of these things, and as I did the research for Babylon Rising and all that, and seeing how much of it goes back to Nimrod and everything, I'm like, okay, now I know. And now that I know, I'm going to be held accountable. So if people want to know why I get so passionate about it, is because I know. And now if you're listening to us, or at least enough to look deeper, because, man, I mean, this stuff's serious. He says, come out of Babylon. Why? So you do not partake of her plagues.
Right.
A Christian is not appointed unto wrath. Well, that's true. Babylon is. But what's going to happen if you stay in Babylon?
Yes, exactly.
You're going to get what's not appointed to you.
Yeah, held accountable.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I get pretty passionate about it. And there it is, right there in Jubilees. We just read it.
Yes, exactly.
You're going to trade the holy for the profane.
Right. Yeah. I tried the link, and it's saying something about private on the browser, but I'll try it again on a different server later. But yeah, that's really amazing. So how long has it been for you as far as being mainly vegetarian and all?
Well, I was coming off of that page. Well, like I said, was it 2016, 17 when Rick and I were doing all that running around?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it was in that season that I began to make the shift. I had actually done it for quite some time when I was younger. In my 20s, I was almost exclusively vegetarian in my 20s for a while, and then kind of got off of it. Because look, I mean, I like steak and everything just like most people do. But I got real intentional about it over the last, I would say, year and a half, probably. The big question was because I was trying to get back in the gym again. I was like, how do I maintain what I need, in terms of proteins and calorie intake and carbs of stuff to be able to do it. And actually, it was my trainer. He said, because I was getting burnt out real quick. I'd work out for a little bit, and within 20 minutes of the workout, I've spent everything that I've eaten before. He told me to eat sweet potatoes, and what a huge difference that make. Like if typically I go to the gym after within an hour or two after eating breakfast. So breakfast for me is eggs and what do you call it? Sourdough bread, and on days that I work out, sweet potatoes. And what a huge difference. Like I saw like massive increases in the weight that I could push and the amount of endurance that I had simply by eating sweet potatoes ahead of time. So, I found it's a myth that you can only get enough protein from meat.
Eating meat, right? Yeah.
What does meat eat?
Yeah, exactly.
I actually saw one of the strongest men in the world, who's apparently a vegetarian. They asked him, "How did you get as strong as an ox? Eating vegetables?" He says, "You ever watch what an ox eats?"
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So it's definitely possible, and I haven't had any issues from it. So, it seems like a better way to go.
Mm-hmm. And with regard to the trifecta, their meals, the vegetarian meals are really good.
Yeah, you can actually do like a la carte, so you can use their menu and pick stuff, or you can get their pre-made stuff. So for a while I did a la carte, and then I tried their vegan meal plan, and it was pretty good. I liked it. But when I tried the vegetarian plan, they have a pre-made plan kind of thing, and they alternate it, so it's not the same every week.
Yeah.
I actually really, really like it. And they use sometimes they use Beyond Beef, which is
plant-based, right?
It looks and tastes like hamburger, but it's all plant, like pea protein and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which actually Chris and Liz had introduced me to at the Take on the World conference a few years ago. So yeah, man, I really like it. If you have a problem with the link that I put in the chat room, let me know. I'll send it to you in an email or something.
Yeah, if you would, I'd appreciate that. And I've been eating like the Morningstar stuff for a very long time, and the plant-based as far as meat and all that, and I really like it. I mean, a lot of it you can't even tell the difference, and I actually like a lot of it better than what is real meat. And so it just takes getting used to and getting adjusted, and making a point to try to do that. But I think a lot of people are trying to move in that direction and trying to eat more with regard to raw fruits and vegetables, and to supplement their diets with nuts and things of that nature, and that just eating too much meat is unhealthy. Eating meat with every meal, we're definitely not supposed to consume that much meat.
No, people ask about, what about plants and this stuff? Well, I mean, this, as far as, GMOs and stuff like that, yes, I mean, there are plants that are being messed with and stuff, but at least here on Trifecta, they claim to be non-GMO, organic stuff. So, all I could do is take it for what they say.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, they claim to check all the boxes for those who are trying to eat healthy, and so, I mean, it works for us. And if you go to that link I sent you to, that I put in the chat room, that takes you to their a la carte menu. But and you can that and pick what you want of that, or you can click on the top menu and it says meals, and on that menu they have keto, clean, paleo, vegan, classic, vegetarian, and I landed on the vegetarian.
Well, very cool. I am definitely gonna try it out, and certainly if it can help us in helping me move away from meat, because I've been trying to do that anyways, and so I think that would be the better way to go. And having good meals already prepared out there, that would save me the time, because I don't do all the cooking anyway. So,
well, it certainly is a time saver. I mean, Sheila and I, same thing. We're always on the go, busy. It's like all I do is open up the packets. The way they're packaged, it doesn't. I'll just be frank, it doesn't look all that appealing. It's just all there in a package. All kind of mushed together. But man, she loves it. I love it. They taste good. So we use a toaster oven. We actually got
Yeah, that's what we do too.
Yeah, I don't use the microwave or anything. We have one. Well, we got the EMF testers and all that kind of stuff. So we're always got the little test. It's like a little tricorder walking around. Like on Star Trek, testing stuff.
Yeah.
And we had when Jake Grant and his wife were here, we decided to test the microwave because they were like, "What's this thing doing?" We're like, "Oh yeah, it tests this EMF," and we're like, "Yeah, let's see. I'll show you." And you had to literally walk like 20 feet away from the thing.
Wow.
To get out of the sort of the danger zone.
Mm-hmm.
What that thing was putting out. We don't use it. So what's that doing to you? I mean,
right. Yeah, they're illegal in a lot of countries. They don't allow them because they're dangerous to health, and a lot of people in our country use them for every meal.
Everything. Yeah. Oh,
everything.
You're already eating crap food, and then you're putting it in a microwave.
Right.
It's like I am amazed at how resilient the human body actually is.
Really. I mean,
punishment we can take internally and externally. It's bad stuff.
Right. Yeah, we are killing ourselves out of habit. And like you said, the human body being resilient, it's amazing that it could put up with the things that what we call normal routine every day. And so many people do live fast food and microwaves. That's the fullness of, their cooking regiment. And
kids, start the, they say,
yeah,
the most important meal of the day is breakfast. I know some people dispute that, but look, all you have to do is look into anything that has to do with fasting, and they'll tell you the most important food that you eat is what you eat right after you fast, and that's why they call it break fast.
Right.
You just fasted, for 8 or 10 hours or whatever, from the time you ate supper and went to bed and the time you wake up. So it's the first thing you should eat. And yet most kids are living on donuts and, sugar
sugar cereal. Yes.
Food coloring sugar. Like our niece is staying with us, and
Pop-Tarts.
she got this. Yeah, she got this like it's like a Fruit Loop knockoff kind of thing, and it says on the back, it says most important meal of the day. A well-balanced meal is the most important thing, for health and survival. And it has this right on there, and it says now let's play the balancing act, and there's some kind of little game that the kid can play on the back of the box. It's like what? Because they have to get away from they put in the thing that you need to have a balanced meal, and the fact that it's just full of food colored sugar,
right?
And they make a game out of it. The balancing act is this game that you can play on the back of the box. It's like what?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the ways that kids are raised, and they don't know any better or any different. And like we said with regard to Pop-Tarts and things, really sugary cereals. I mean, I can't eat those kind of things. Not only because they're just overwhelmingly sweet, and I don't do a lot of sweets or anything, but it's just doesn't taste good when you move away from that kind of stuff, that's overwhelming to your senses, and how you could find and take care of your hunger with that kind of stuff. It just doesn't make sense. And even like people that drink all the sugary drinks and sodas and never drink water. There's a lot of girls that work for me that never drink water, and I don't know how they sustain themselves. It's crazy to me.
It's a miracle. I mean, I know people like that too that don't drink water. They drink various juices and things. I mean, they're getting a minuscule amount of water probably squeaked out. Their kidneys are working like, okay, maybe I can squeeze water out of whatever it is that you just consumed.
Right.
But like primarily that's what I drink, alkaline water. That's like the prime. I'll drink some other things too, but that's my primary drink that I will drink. That Sheila got me on coconut water.
I love coconut water and aloe water.
Aloe water, yes. The coconut has really helped me. You may, if people look at some of my older videos where I show my hands shaking, not like Parkinson's shaking, but like if you put your hands together and you apply pressure, like my hands would be really shaky. And like I could lift the same amount of weight as I've always been able to, but whenever I would lift it, like my muscles would be shaking like crazy. The only thing that I did was increase potassium and magnesium. And of course, coconut water has potassium, and I was taking magnesium supplements and eating bananas. And that made a huge difference. And other things, people are magnesium deficient, and we're like deficient in like everything.
Yes, really. Yeah, really, we are. Yeah, so crazy.
Well, we kind of derailed the topic, but I think it's something to talk about because I mean, this is what was talked about here by the author of Jubilees, whoever you want to say it was, saying that these things are important. So, it's all it. I mean, when you think about why the flood happened in the first place, it was because of the corruption of all flesh. Mm-hmm. And like we talked about in the first half-hour segment of the broadcast, is that the last days would be like the days of Noah. And part of that being the corruption of all flesh. Well, I mean, it's our diet is corrupting our flesh, foods and all this, all kinds of GMO. It's all corrupting us.
All right, brother. Another good show. We'll pick it up next week on yours.
Thank you.
God bless all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.